It's very difficult to build a carrier operating system, especially when carriers are not willing to pay. Carriers really run on thin margins. It's 10 times more complex to build a carrier operating system than it is to build a freight brokerage solution. So how do you solve that problem? How do you offer a solution that will solve all the pain points for carriers, while at the same time, it has to be cheap enough?
Hey, this is Paul from Freight Caviar, and you're listening to the Daily Freight Caviar podcast, where I interview people from the logistics industry on freight tech, outsourcing, and other interesting topics. If you want to check out more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com. I mean, last week we had Leo looking at the board. Well, Leo has actually a new image on his whiteboard, which actually would be interesting if, Leo, you could tell us what's on the whiteboard. What do you have there?
Oh, this time?
Yeah, what is this time?
Yeah, well, so this is something that's called Islandberg MacLane space, and it's a model for how to model space as a collection of components that make up the space. It was for a tech talk that we had.
Okay, that sounds very, very complicated.
I don't think we need to say any more about that.
So this is episode 2. Last week we had the first episode where I talked to Leo about his background and how you and Nick met, how Leo and Nick met together and started Alvys, the TMS. So whose idea was Alvys? Who came up with the idea?
Are you asking about the name or the actual idea?
The actual idea, like the company. And then we could get into the name aspect too, because that's actually pretty interesting too. I want to figure out how you came up with the name.
Okay. Well, the company, first of all, it was one of those experiences that I've experienced in my other company where I've used multiple different TMSs, and I realized everything I was using was just not good enough. It wouldn't just solve the daily pain points. And at one point, I decided to just go and branch out on my own, get a few developers and start building an in-house TMS to solve the pain points of my logistics company. And that's basically how Alvys started, and it started in 2017. After about 3 to 4 years, I realized that we are putting out a lot of fires. The more we built, the more complicated it was getting, and I knew something had to change. At the same time, I realized the carrier market is one of those markets that's really been overlooked by software companies, and I wanted to focus on the carrier. But just to step back, I wanted to mention Alvys really focuses on middle mile logistics. And within the middle mile logistics, there's 3 main verticals. Those are shippers, freight brokers, and carriers. While Alvys does have solutions for shippers and freight brokers, we focus on the carrier market. And the reason we focus on the carrier market is because software companies really have overlooked the carrier market. But why did they overlook the carrier market? Couldn't they build something important? Couldn't they build something that will solve their pain points? Well, apparently, it's very difficult to build a carrier operating system, especially when carriers are not willing to pay. Carriers really run on thin margins. It's 10 times more complex to build a carrier operating system than it is to build a freight brokerage solution. So how do you solve that problem? How do you offer a solution that will solve all the pain points for carriers, while at the same time, it has to be cheap enough? So in my opinion, I realized we need to go after the scale. We need to have hundreds of engineers to build a complex solution, but how do we make sense? Where's the unit economics? The unit economics behind it is to go after scale, is to adapt every carrier into our platform while offering a cheap enough solution for them. So this is why, and that's how, and that's what we do at Alvys, is build this complex system that will help the carriers with their daily workflows. And we're doing it at scale. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's basically where we are.
Makes sense. I was wondering if you could tell us what were those specific pain points that you try to tackle when you built your in-house TMS, and what is Alvys like specifically targeting right now? Like, why would a carrier decide to go with Alvys compared to another TMS?
Well, I always like to say one of the pain points that we try to solve is to really make it a good platform for users, not necessarily from the developer standpoint. A lot of the software, a lot of the TMSs, they're built from the engineering standpoint. They have what it takes to create an accounting or solve an accounting problem, or solve a sourcing problem, or solve a tracking problem. What they don't have is the actual user experience.
Yeah.
While the engineers build a good architecture, it really makes no sense for the end user. And that's where I was going after. I needed to make sure that dispatcher doesn't waste his time doing something within the system without Xing out or going into different windows to update something for a driver, then assign the driver back to the load. He's already wasted a minute or two. Yeah. Why not just create something at his fingertips? Those are some of the pain points. And there's hundreds of these kind of examples that every end user is just upset with every TMS out there. Now I'm trying to.
I've dealt with it too. McLeod and just to name a large company.
Well, thanks for understanding. But that's where the experience is very important. All while you cannot build a complicated system without the right engineers.
Yeah.
So you have to couple those two. They have to work in unison to create something that's of value to the end user.
Sure. So, like, I know that just from seeing Alvys, I've seen a lot of it. You're spending a lot of time marketing it and growing it. And you said that you had to grow it, like to scale it to be very big, right?
That's the only way the unit economics makes sense. You got to understand, in order to build what we're building, we have to have hundreds of engineers.
Yeah, and lots of customers.
I mean, the customers are not willing to pay a lot of money for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially carriers, right?
Yeah.
So how do you solve that problem? How do you solve the end-to-end pain points without getting a lot of customers so that you could offer it at a reasonable price? That's the idea behind it. And so we decided to just, let's go ahead, let's embark on this journey, let's figure this out, let's build this complex system. And at one point, it's going to make sense once every carrier onboards Alvys.
Sure.
And let me add to that from the engineering perspective. What I saw as being very critical parts of this early history of Alvys was that, number one, it was this idea of like scratching your own itch. Is the need to build the system came because they tried to use existing software, right? Nick, as an operator, he was paying very close attention to operations and how efficient things were. He tried a bunch of different things, very, very hands-on. And after trying and exhausting all possibilities, he took a leap of faith and said, okay, we need to build something on our own. So it started with actually trying to use the ecosystem that's out there, investing into it, and reflecting and seeing whether that makes sense. That's part number one. Part number two, what Nick was talking about was the idea that, sure, you can get a bunch of engineers, but unless you co-locate them with the users of the system, unless you focus on the user experience, it won't really matter. They'll just build something that's technically oriented around some technology rather than focusing on the user. So that's the other very critical aspect, is developing this product in conjunction with the user. So those are the foundation, parts of the foundation that led us to where we are today. And then the final piece is that Nick was very hands-on with the software engineers, right? It wasn't just like, hey, you build this and I'll see you when it's done. And we actually had a conversation about this because when we first met, Nick couldn't understand why I was so impressed by what they built, because I was very impressed. I was like, wow, you guys did this yourselves? But I think now, after we've tried to grow the team and build a thing, he can see the challenges involved in building such a massive system. Is everyone has to be on the same page: the engineers, the users, all the participants. And so all those things were done right at the early history of Alvys. And from the engineering perspective, that's what brings us here today.
Okay. And I actually want to return back to the story because I do find it to be fascinating. Leo, you met Nick through your dad. Is that correct?
Through my dad and through my sister, right? So I don't know all the details, but basically a couple of years ago, my sister reached out to me saying, hey, I know this guy who's in the freight industry. He wanted to speak to you. And, I didn't think anything much of it. I was talking to a lot of people at that time. So, so we connected in that way, but I guess they ran into each other at the airport on the way to vacation. So it was a very random kind of thing. Maybe it would have not happened if they hadn't run into each other on the way to vacation. That's kind of the story that I know.
Yeah. And then you said you were talking to a lot of people, but yet you chose Nick. I mean, there must have been a reason for that. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, so I was at that point I was doing my consulting work. I was still living in New York. I was doing consulting, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And one of the things I was thinking about is to grow this consulting business and to just work with a bunch of different startups and help them scale. And so I did speak to a lot of founders, and so there's several reasons why I decided to go with Nick. First of all, he was in a very exciting industry, supply chain, and it's something that I'd already been thinking about. I actually already thought about doing some software in this trucking industry. I was going to be focused on auto hauling, not the broader freight market. So I really liked the product, which was great. And then I mean, I think the biggest thing was that once we started talking to each other, I got a sense that I feel like this guy knows what he's doing, and I felt that we had good synergy. We work well together. We complement each other's skills. And then, of course, going back to the software that they've already built, right? That was, it took me a while to really understand what was going on, because all of it seemed too good to be true, because they already have a working product. They have what I felt like was product market fit. And if they have product market fit with a product that they built with not the most experienced team, I knew it was something very special that they had going on. So from my perspective, my role is pretty simple. You take this product that they've built, and all you have to do is just make it a scalable piece of infrastructure. And not that that's easy to do, but that's a much more deterministic type of process. And so all those things had to make sense. It was the right kind of industry, the right kind of product that was far enough along. The business vision was great. They already had a great team. And like I said, it was almost too good to be true. And it took me a while to realize that, but I'm glad that I did.
Yeah, that's why he was constantly. I think he asked me a few times, I don't understand. How did you build it? I mean, how were you involved? And he didn't really give me an answer as to he wants to join us or not, because I was talking to other folks to join as CTOs, but I really liked Leo. He was driving me nuts. He would just take forever to give me an answer. I'm like, dude, you need to really make up your mind. What's going on? He's like, well, can you tell me just what exactly did you do? How did they all come to build what? I'm like, dude, what's the question? I don't understand. I just went on. I talked to them. I was drawing everything on a board, and we just started to build one after another, one module, one step at a time, to a point where it got so complex that every time they would release another module, something else will be broken, right? And everything was getting so much slower. And this is where I realized I need someone who knows how to build scalable technology. And thank God I ran into his sister while going on vacation, and then we reconnected during COVID again, and his sister is like, well, my brother is the one that really built Jet. I'm like, really? How is it that you don't know about him? So right away I really wanted to talk to him, and that's basically how it all came about.
Sure. So now, like, you're trying to market this and scale it with customers and the technology. What is your strategy behind scaling it?
Scaling the technology or the business itself?
Both. I mean, how are you getting more customers, and how are you, developing the technology behind it?
Well, one of the things that we've done very different than most of the companies. I want to make one note that's very important, especially with what's happening in the VC world. Most of the companies, they try to raise money to build a product. I don't think it's possible to build what we built had we been backed up by VCs. The reason behind is VCs would always push you to get customers. The minute you get your first customer while building this product, you failed, because you're just going to be consumed by the customer. The customer is never going to be satisfied. By the way, we still have a lot of glitches. We still have a product that we have to refine it and make it much better. And that's 6 years later. Let alone first year. Are you kidding me? It's impossible to be backed by a VC and build the system that we're building today. So what we've done really well, we've de-risked a lot by building a massive system without getting any customers on board. Now that we have this end-to-end with multiple modules working together nicely, it is only now we feel comfortable to market to customers, and we have great testimonies. Customers, they just, as soon as they see our product, they're shocked. It's like, what's going on here? How is it that I didn't know about it? Well, because we just didn't want to market it beforehand. We wanted to make sure most of the work is done, and that we're just scratching the surface, to be honest. So that's the marketing piece. We decided to wait until the product is somewhat close to being perfect. And again, we all define what perfection is differently, but to me, perfection is an important element. And I was an operator. It would drive me nuts every time the software will glitch and slow down and not work for what I really need, right? And I had a really good gut intuition as to what it's required for the customer to be satisfied. All right, now that we've reached this point, we're going to start, and we're starting to market and onboard new customers. That's from the marketing standpoint. From the technology standpoint, that's really Leo's department, and he's doing great things in that department.
Yeah, and from a technology perspective, just to add to that, a few things had to come together in order to make this viable, to make these unit economics viable. One of those things is the cloud. Alvys is a cloud native. It was built in the cloud, and it's going to stay in the cloud. Now, we've all been hearing about the cloud for the past 10, 15 years, right? But the cloud isn't one thing. The cloud has matured a lot over the past 10 years compared to what we had at our disposal when we were starting Jet, which was, we were using Azure at that time, just like we are at Alvys. In those 10 years since then, it has matured so much that makes a substantial difference as to what your technology strategy needs to be. Because if we didn't have the cloud, we need to have a whole engineering team that's focused on maintaining our servers, our infrastructure, and all that sort of stuff. We don't need to have those people. All of that has been taken care of by the cloud. Also, maturity of other technologies, all the libraries that we use, all the third-party services have matured a lot over the past 10 years. And what that means is that we can get a relatively small team, not necessarily with a lot of experience, and actually have a chance of pulling this off. This would not be possible 10 years ago, certainly not possible 20 years ago. And so those things had to come together to be able to scale the technology. But with that said, it's not like by saying that we're in the cloud, we're automatically scalable. In the cloud, there's the possibility to make your system automatically scalable. You have to pay attention to your system architecture in order for that to be true. And in order for that to be true in the sense that you're not bound to a given data center in the cloud, but you can shift between data centers. And that also takes some engineering skill. But because we have so much at our disposal, and we have this sort of second mover advantage where we can compete with the legacy players because they're not running in the cloud, they're using old engineering practices, and we can come in and really disrupt the industry by making use of the latest tools. And that was also another critical piece of what was done at Alvys early on, is by building the technology entirely within Azure and being very judicious about the choices of services to use, because without that, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing now.
Sure.
I really like what Leo has done to work around all the glitches and all the bugs the system has. By the way, before I move on, I forbid our salespeople to tell our potential customers that our system is just perfect, because it's not. This is such a complex system that it's impossible to make it perfect at all times. But what Leo has done is create a workflow in place to work on those bugs immediately in ways that other software companies lack. That's the approach that we have. Mm-hmm. And over time, it's going to become more perfect and more perfect. That's the idea. So when people ask me, is your software perfect? I'd be lying if I'd be saying, yeah, it's perfect. It can't not be perfect. It's very complex. There are so many different moving parts happening at the same time that I feel this is such a common. This is why no one has really built this Caviar operating system in the past, because of its complexity. I always tell people, since we already have a freight brokerage component for freight brokerage module, it's about 10 times more complex to build a Caviar operating system than it is to build a freight brokerage module.
Why is that?
Because of so many different things that you have to, and I'll give you one example. Okay. Just think about what a freight broker does. A freight broker will usually assign a carrier to a load and then manage that load through its completion, invoice the customer, pay the carrier, so on and so forth. And what I just described is already complicated enough. Add to the fact that you need to deal with a driver that's paired to a specific truck and trailer. So there's 3 components that have to be paired at the same time. From the technology standpoint, this is so difficult to do because every time you swap a trailer, every time you swap a driver, it really throws some serious problems into your system. And dispatchers sometimes are lost. Wait a second, I thought this driver is assigned to that trailer. How is it that trailer is in Arkansas when I thought the trailer is in Washington, right? And so when you take that at scale, the complexity is multiplied. That's what I've noticed. And that's just one example I'm giving you. Then we have the complexity of how do you pay the driver? Do you pay it by the miles? Do you pay it by the percentage? Do you pay it by what's greater? What if the percentage is greater than the mileage that he has done? Do you have that built? Do you have that workflow built within the system where the system knows what to do without creating any kind of friction between accounting department, dispatchers, and the drivers, right? Because as soon as you create a system where there's some errors on their pay stub, on driver's pay stub, drivers no longer want to work for you. They think you're trying to take them for a ride. And now they're looking for another company to work for, which is why a lot of people think about and talk about a driver shortage. I disagree with driver shortage. I feel the workflows and the efficiencies within the carrier companies is not there where the drivers are satisfied. So what we're trying to do here at Alvys is to make sure that the workflows are flawless to a point where drivers are loyal to their company.
And so, Nick, with scaling a TMS, it's been I guess, recently a lot more competitive than it used to be. You said the legacy carriers, and they had like a large market share. How are you seeing the competition right now in terms of like, are they developing? Do you know what your competition is doing? And what are some, I guess, difficulties that you're facing at the moment, just like any other business would be facing, that you have to, I guess, overcome?
Well, if I compare ourselves to our competition, it's very difficult for me to compare. So on surface, we all look the same. We all say we solve the same problems. We have IFTA, we have driver's pay module, we have all kinds of things. But then you ask the question, does it actually work? That's a different subject, right? So to me, it's all about whether it actually works. Forget about the AI and machine learning and all the cool stuff that's being built out there. Does the simple module work flawlessly every time? That's what we focus on. The other thing I would say, when it comes to legacy TMSs, whatever it takes them 30 seconds, it's probably going to take us 5 seconds to complete, 3 seconds to complete. That's the idea. That's the user-centric approach, as opposed to build a system for the sake of architecture or from the engineering standpoint.
Sure.
So in order to create those kind of workflows where it takes you 5 seconds as opposed to 30 seconds or a minute, you probably have to build, I don't know, 10 times, 100 times. You can ask Leo more code around everything, and that creates even more complexity in the system. And how do you actually manage for bugs so it actually executes efficiently? So that's where where we're different. Our system actually works, and it takes us a lot fewer moments or seconds to do the same thing other systems do.
So it's all about user experience. It's focusing on, okay.
User experience. And under that goes a few other things, right? A few cornerstones of how we stand apart from some of our competitors. If we compare ourselves to legacy players like McLeod, we're not necessarily going to compete with them on just the quantity of the features they have. They've been around since the 80s and they're quite comprehensive. The way we compare to a system like that is what Nick said earlier, is just whatever you are going to do in McLeod as part of your workflow to move a load, it's going to take you a lot less time to do it with Alvys. And that's just across the board. We focus on the user workflow. Now, the other aspect, another competitive advantage that we have is what we mentioned earlier as to how we build the software, which is we have a very close relationship with our users. We have a very tight feedback loop with them. We have our own operators that are part of Alvys, and they also give us feedback. We have relationships with our tenants. Some of our tenants are early adopters, and we've been working with them to develop the product. And so this feedback loop of making sure everyone's on the same page, that the engineers know the business just as well as the operators do. That's another advantage that we have that you can't really replicate. You can't just hire a third-party development shop and then ask them all to be trained with hands-on operations. But we have in our offices, we have engineers sit right next to the operators and they go shadow them. They get to try it themselves. They get to pick up the phone, book loads and things like that. So that's another competitive advantage that we have. And another one is the operational piece that we touched on earlier, is that it's not just about building the code and having a great architecture and using the cloud. It's about responding to incidents with the product, making sure you catch all the bugs. And a large class of bugs you'll know about because the customer will tell you about it, which is great. And if you can react to that, that's great. Then there's all these other things that the customer won't tell you about. And we have to anticipate those issues, and having a very strong operational culture, a strong on-call rotation, responding to incidents, following up. That's another part of our technical advantage that we hope to leverage against our competitors.
And also price, right? Because Alvys is much, I guess, just less costly than McLeod.
Yeah, we
All
have
right.
we have the philosophy: charge less and make more money.
Okay, so could you compare the prices of like McLeod to Alvys? Could you tell me what they are?
First of all, our price point is so straight to the point that I'm not going to be able to compare to anyone out there because everything is confusing out there.
Yeah,
I still don't
true.
understand what they're charging for and exactly how they go
Totally.
about, and whether it goes based on a specific customer.
Mhm.
We're very straightforward. We decided not to charge for integrations. We decided not to charge for onboarding. There's no point to do any of that stuff, at least to us. Since we're going after scale, there is absolutely no point to do that. So we're very straightforward. Look, this is the price. You're not going to have any surprises, right? Whereas with the other folks, it's still confusing to me. For example, when I implemented 3 different TMSs back in the days, there was always that surprising element down the road. Oh, you didn't tell me about that. Well, we're not going to have that. And I'm against that kind of practice. It's going to be very straightforward. This is how much it is. And it's really based on consumption, right? If you move X amount of loads, or if you call X amount of APIs, this is going to be your bill. Very straightforward.
Sure.
I think to add to that, as far as our pricing, we don't have these like upfront contracts that we ask people to sign. Like we were talking to a potential customer, and they were in talks to sign this contract with another TMS, and it was like going to be a 10-year contract worth like $10 million. And that was all before they even got a chance to see the software. And so we don't need to do that. We are very confident in our product. And because we've built it very efficiently, we can actually make this work. We can make this viable because it doesn't actually cost that much, right? We can look at what our cloud costs, break it down, and in a sense, pass that cost to the customer. And we don't have to charge a lot of money to make this viable because of the choices that we made early on.
So how do you scale it to where like there's thousands of customers using Alvys? What's the strategy? Like do you just try to get salespeople on the phone all day and you call them? Like what is, there's probably a lot that goes into it, but is there anything that you specifically focus on that's also a little bit different? Because you're already differentiating yourself with the TMS. So what about the sales side?
So what we've noticed recently, everyone that's using Alvys, they're bringing 5 or 10 other customers on board.
Oh, wow.
It's just crazy what's happening.
So just word of mouth.
Just word of mouth.
It's that good that it's word of mouth. Okay. That just means
so we're thinking, wow, well, what are we doing? What's really going on? It's even better than I thought, but we'll probably have a different conversation 3 months from now. We'll see. There's always a surprise, right? I will always approach the situation with humility. I will never be overconfident. I'll always take the product seriously. I don't want our team to think, oh, we're so great, therefore we should not focus on important elements, right? I want to make sure that everyone on our team always understands there could always be something that's going to go wrong and upset a customer. What are we doing about it? Sure. What can we do to make sure we don't fail them? Their business depends on our platform. Are we just relaxed and thinking, oh, we're great? So I don't want the numbers that's coming into our sales pipeline to drive some kind of pride that I've seen with other companies. The fact that they're coming in, don't think everything is going to be perfect. Let's focus on what's important. Let's focus on, let's never forget how important the customer is. Let's do something preventative instead of reacting later on, just because we thought, hey, we should relax since we have so many customers.
Yeah. So Nick, you're a perfectionist. I've noticed, which is a really high quality to have. I'm wondering if Leo, are you a perfectionist as well?
I mean, in both a good way and a bad way, right? I think perfectionism can mean, on the one hand, you pay a lot of attention to detail and you try to come up with the best product, but it could also mean that you are spinning around in circles and not making any progress because you try to make it perfect. And I mean, I've been a victim of my own self in that regard, and so I think to some extent. I am, but that's very important to keep a handle on that when it comes to engineering, right? Because our primary goal with Alvys is to help our customers. It's not to have a perfect architecture on the back. So it's something I try to balance.
Sure. I'm wondering, just because I've done like the Enneagram personality test before. I'm not sure. Have you ever heard of the Enneagram personality test? Mm-hmm. Have you done it, Leo?
Not that one. I mean, there's the other one, like the Myers-Briggs, I think it's called. So, but I think they're all similar. Yeah.
I really like the Enneagram one. It's something that really stuck with me. So there's like, if you're a perfectionist, you're a 1, and it's I have a psychology background, so it's just interesting sometimes to talk about that. But it definitely impacts your personality. Obviously impacts the product because you really try to perfect every detail. Which is amazing. And I'm wondering if like, what is your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan? Are you trying to build it up and sell it, or are you maybe trying to do that but don't want us to know? Like, this question doesn't have to be answered if you don't want to, but I'm curious just for myself. I could also always edit it out. What is the plan with Alvys?
On my wish list for 5 years, my ambitious wish list is for Alvys to become a technology leader in this space. The quality of the software in the supply chain space, based on what I've seen, is quite low. And we have all this engineering talent that's sitting in Google, sitting in Facebook, and a lot of them are basically they're paid for by Google just so they don't go to other startups and create a competitor. And I'm really looking forward to hiring over the next few years here in the US, because we have such a great mission and we could pull a lot of talent from Facebook and Google and wherever else they are and pull them into logistics and really disrupt the industry. There's just so much opportunity here, so much low-hanging fruit that even with Alvys, there's a lot of manual work that remaining. And I think with Alvys, we can really be a leader in the industry and elevate the quality of the software and make supply chains more efficient. We can actually put a dent into the carbon footprint of the country and just get by better with a lot less. And so that would be an ambitious goal for us to achieve.
Totally. And where did you come up with the name? That was you, Nick, that came up with the name, right?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
It means to act wisely.
And
our system
in English?
acts wisely. Well, it's one of those definitions you'll find on Google. Alvys is a name that means acting wisely, if you will. And since our system is intuitive and acts wisely for you, Alvys makes sense.
I like that. And did I hear something that you're going to be changing the spelling of the name? Is that correct? Or is that just something I made up?
The what?
The spelling of the company. I heard, Ava, was that you? Did you say something about that or no?
What was the original spelling, Nick? That's a funny story.
Okay, there was.
I think it's just we struggled with the name, right? Because Alvys, the way it's spelled, some people pronounce it Alvys.
Yeah, that's the way I pronounce it.
We don't want to pronounce it Alvys, and so we kind of had some conversations around that, but we'll see. I mean, I didn't think we were going to change the spelling, but
at first, it was Alvys or Alvys with a U, right? And then, well, again, there's different definitions behind it. either way, we basically decided to switch it to Alvys because of the definition of acting wisely. That's
I like that. It's a good name. So a few other topics, I guess, that I want to talk about here while we have about 14 minutes. So integrations, who are you integrating with? Like which companies? And then about conferences, because you've been to so many conferences. If you could tell us about your experiences at the conferences and which ones were your favorite.
Well, when it comes to conferences, I feel my favorite was the one in San Diego.
TIA.
Since we're in San Diego, right?
Okay.
TIA. It was
Yeah.
a great conference. I really liked it. The other one is Manifest. It was a great conference, especially with the concert at the end of the conference.
Ludacris.
Yeah.
Saw the
Were you
video.
at that? Were you on that one or no?
No, I wasn't, but I had a lot of I knew a lot of people that went, and so I saw photos on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and videos of Ludacris. So
yeah, so it was definitely great. I wonder what Ava has to say about conferences.
Well, I enjoyed sponsoring the Ludacris show. That was the first conference that I went to with the team, and I'm like, okay, logistics, it's hopping over here. Yeah, the Manifest conference, the Ludacris, Ludacris is from Atlanta, where I'm from, so I thought that was very cool. But no, TCA was also really awesome. I think TCA is great because, our customer base is mostly carriers, also brokers, but with TCA, you've got a lot of carriers there. And I sat in on some of the talks and actually learned a lot. Sometimes I sit in on talks and I feel like it's almost like a marketing presentation, but at TCA, I felt like the information was really good. But we've sponsored probably 10 conferences so far this year. So it becomes a bit of a blur. FreightWaves was really fun, right? I think we met you, Paul, at TIA in San Diego.
Yeah. That was the only conference I went to. That was actually the first logistics conference I've been to. Interesting enough, yeah. Because I was going to be at the TIA conference March 2020, and then the pandemic hit, so I didn't make it out.
And that's really one of our strategies, Paul, because you were asking about that. And it's what I have seen is in being on the marketing side of things is that a lot of this is relationship based. And as you get the sense from Nick that he's a very honest person, that he's gonna tell it like it is, that he's gonna put the pricing on the website, which nobody does. Nobody's putting their pricing on the website, but we do. You could see it exactly how much it costs.
That's
smart. So that honest, trust me, trust the product has been, I think, huge for us in ways that maybe Leo and Nick, because they're so inside of it, they don't see it as much. But me coming on board in January, I've just noticed how extremely authentic and honest the leadership team is, and people pick up on that. So we go to a lot of conferences and we build relationships with people, and they end up trusting us, and then they trust the product. And just like they said, they recommend it to the people that they know, so a lot of it is word of mouth. And I don't know if you're interested in knowing some of the marketing efforts, because you were asking how we plan to generate a lot of sales and stuff. And it's certainly by going to a lot of conferences, building relationships, keeping our customers very happy, listening to them, iterating the software according to their needs. But also we've had a lot of success with Facebook ads for people that might, watch this podcast and be thinking about marketing and how to get the word out. Facebook ads have been really good. LinkedIn, they have an ad module where you can do messaging campaigns that we've had some luck with. Yeah.
No, cool.
Conferences are also one of the few chances we get to see each other in person. Like we said earlier, we're all remote. And that's actually a fun part of the conference, is we actually get to see each other. One conference I definitely remember. Well, I remember a lot of them. Not that this is relevant, but I know that Western Growers had the best food and wine compared to all the
other. And food shippers. Excellent food.
I don't think I went to that one.
So you weren't at TIA, right? You weren't at TIA.
I was at TIA.
Really? Did we meet at TIA? I don't think you didn't go out the last night, did you? Because I'm at
no.
Leo was working. He was probably going to his room early to actually
The crash.
Yeah,
gotta
you
work
have
on
to
something
pull
with the
Leo
crash.
out. Leo
I
tries
met
to
the-
go back to the room and work.
Yeah, I met the Alvys team through Dom. Dom caught me at the baseball park, and it was just so funny because then we walked with Dom to the Marriott, and then Dom got kicked out of the hotel, which was hilarious.
I didn't even hear about that.
Yeah,
He's legendary, Dom. He's a legend.
Yeah, totally.
The other milestone with conferences for us was when we started to demo our product, because we've been going to conferences as a sponsor, but it was in, I forgot which one it was, a few conferences ago. It was, I think it was, anyway, it doesn't matter which one it was, but we actually started to we had our own booth. People were coming. And that was a very pivotal moment for me, because I got a chance to see how other people react to the software that aren't necessarily potential customers.
Sure.
And that was a great, because our potential customers were excited to see what we had, and then our competitors were very fearful to see what we have.
Definitely.
Yeah. So about the integrations, we consistently integrate with multiple solutions. You name it, Truck Stop, Safer Watch, Blue Jay, SAP, on and on and on. We constantly integrate with a lot of the ELDs, Samsara, Keep Trucking, and it's an endless amount of companies we consistently integrate depending on our customers' needs.
Okay, so it's powerful. Where most large companies that are in logistics tech are integrated with Alvys. Okay. So yeah, I mean, very cool. I don't know what else to say right now. Do you have any thoughts, Ava, Leo, Nick, that they want to tell us?
I mean, there's so many directions we can go. We can, I'm sure, make conversations about things for a long time, even about integrations, right? So from a technology perspective, integrations is something you really have to think about long term. We have, at this point, I think we have almost 100 integrations. And because our platform is end to end, it covers the whole workflow end to end. It's a big platform, and we end up integrating with a lot of other verticals like tracking, accounting, you name it. There's just, we're going to have hundreds of integrations over the next year. And that's a lot of integrations. That's a lot of code. And that's actually part of our technology strategy, is that we're not just going to build these integrations in isolation. We have a whole framework for building integrations, actually investing into the infrastructure to make integrations work better. We don't look at integration as like a whole new project. We look at it as a plugin. Is that, okay, we want to integrate with Tyson and get loads from their load board. Well, we have the idea of an external TMS, and we just make a plugin specifically for Tyson. And so we're trying to get a lot of integrations. We need to do a lot more, but we really have to attack this problem with a principled approach to doing integrations. And so there's a lot that goes into making that work. A lot of modern software, the challenge has been shifting from the complexity of the individual components of the software to all the integrations that we have, right? Like we have the cloud, we have all these third-party services, software as a service, platform as a service. Well, that's great, but you still got to bring it all back together into a single system. And that's a lot more challenging, right? When you're using some sort of a function that you have in your own system, well, you know what it does. You can look at the code and it's kind of predictable. But when you're using a third-party service, you're accessing a service that's in another data center operated by another company, and you don't know how well it operates. So you have to design your system such that it doesn't create a single point of failure, but it's still able to integrate with all these different providers, making sure we have the proper authentication keys from our customers, that it's all secure. And there's a lot of challenges in just doing integrations, right? Integrations aren't like a binary thing. And that's one of the challenges we have about communicating about our product, similar to the idea that, well, how do we tell customers that our product actually works? right? And how do we talk about integrations? What does it mean if you have an integration with QuickBooks? It's not just a yes or no type of question. It's like, what does the integration do? How deep is it? And so that's going to be another one of our advantages, is how well we're able to integrate with other companies, how quickly we can do it, and how reliably.
I think it'd be really cool, like in the next episode, or maybe in two, like if we were to do a screen share where like we would go through like the Alvys system and, you know, like actually maybe built a load or broke the load.
Yeah.
I think that'd be exciting to do. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Freight Caviar podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.